Hi, I'm Anne. Many of you may know me as Anne of All Trades, and today I'm going to show you how I built these bookshelves. I learned a lot while I was trying to incorporate video making into my making process, so please bear with me as I stumble through this, but I hope there's plenty of good information that you can glean from the process nonetheless. Thanks so much for watching. We'll start by marking out the mortises that will contain the tusks, or keys, which are the signature aesthetic and strength feature of this piece. You will notice that I've already cut the sides of the bookshelves to size and cut the dadoes for the shelves. These are the two steps I completed using power tools prior to filming, both to save time in filming and also because those are pretty basic tasks. To mark out the mortises for the tusks, I'm using two sets of dividers, one set to the inner dimension of the wall of the mortise and the outer dimension of the wall of the mortise. I use a double square to carry the edges of the dado around the case so I can gauge where to cut my mortise on the opposite side of the case. I mark both sides. I'm skipping ahead a bit here, but when it comes to time to cut the mortises, I'll start my mortise on the face or outward facing side of the mortise and cut in towards the dado. When I've cut 3/4 of the way through, I'll flip my piece over and finish from the dado or non-showing side. My reasoning here is that if unsupported grain breaks away during the mortising process, it will happen on the hidden rather than the showing side of the joint. Careful layout at this stage is crucial, and a few extra moments taken here will pay off big with crisp, beautiful joints later. Next, we'll mark out the tenons, which will protrude outside the carcass and capture the tusks, or keys, and lend strength to the bookshelf. It is at this step we decide just how far the joinery will protrude from the case and the final dimension of the shelves. The middle shelf is marked and cut to the same length of the top and bottom shelves minus the tusks. I will cut the tenons before I cut the mortises because if I make a mistake on the tenons, I can simply adjust the position of my mortises, but hopefully everything will go smoothly and I can use my initial mortise layout. It's time to cut out the tusks. A few words on sawing technique here. I have my piece firmly clamped square in my vise, just slightly higher than the depth of the tenon I'm cutting, so I can get the most bite out of my vise and reduce chatter from the saw as much as possible. I'll start my cuts on the radius of my thumb at the tip of the saw and gently push the saw forward. Say hello to my shop cat Oliver, who is likely to show up in all my videos. I will make all my vertical cuts with a back saw, cut out the middle of the waist with a coping saw, and flip the piece on edge to remove the corner pieces. You see me rubbing beeswax on the saw here, and this is a fantastic way to lubricate the cut, prevent the saw plate from heating, and provide long-term moisture protection for your tools. I also like using mutton tallow, but the beeswax was closer. As I'm sawing, notice my body position. I have my non-dominant foot forward and my non-dominant hand resting on the work. This tripod position gives me strength and stability and ensures I'm not putting any weight on the back of the saw. Gravity and the heavy brass back of the saw will do everything they need to get the saw through the cut. I don't need to push down. I've moved my body out of the way so my arm can swing freely, and I'm gripping the saw handle lightly, imagining it's a baby bird that I don't want to crush. Farm reference! All I have to do here is move the saw back and forth and it will stay on the line. Since these joints will be captured in the dado and won't show, they don't need to be pretty. I do, however, want to make sure there are no proud areas within the joint which will prevent it from seating fully, so I'll chisel out any waste that's left above my saw line. Since there are no sawing errors in my tenons, I moved straight towards waste removal of the mortises. I chose the widest Forstner bit that fit within my mortise layout and drilled two side-by-side holes from both sides of the wood so as not to blow out any grain on either side of the cut. I then cleaned up the mortises by chopping out the remaining waste with a 3/4 inch chisel, which was quite handy considering my material is also 3/4 of an inch. I'm trying to economize there on my number of chisel chops. Be very cautious while chiseling out your waste. Remember to start on the show side, then flip and remove the rest of the waste from the dado side. I use my finger as a stop block so I don't slip and mar my bench chop, but if you're not confident with this technique, use a chopping block beneath your piece. As I'm chopping, I've clamped my pieces down solidly on my bench chop, just over the leg of my bench, which will allow me to get the most bang for my buck when it comes to chisel strikes with the mallet. If you chop in the middle of the bench, your bench will flex and your piece will bounce with each strike. Imperceptible as it may be, there will be a loss of force if you aren't intentional about where you place your blows. I got a little ahead of myself and I already started chopping my mortises in my keyed tenons before I filmed the layout and the chopping process. So I'm going back here now and doing that. Basically, you're going to want to assemble the carcass with the tenons poking out. And then you're going to take a layout block, or you're going to take a key and decide where it looks good on the key to leave it set. So I basically want half of the key to be showing on this side and half of the key to be showing on this side. So I marked out a line there, as you can see. And now I'm just going to use the key or the tusk as my layout guide for the lines here. So I'll mark along here, and this will be the angle that I'm mortising, or the angle that I'm angling the mortise at. And then I also want to use the bookshelf here to mark the back of the mortise. If you undercut that ever so slightly, it won't get in the way, and there's no chance for material to stop your key from going in the right place. But we're going to chop this out the same way as we did the others. I'll first drill out the waste, and then I'll chop it, and then my final pass with my chisel, I use this line that I made as a visual guide to angle the hole out that way. And so then I'll test fit it with my key, and if I'm pleased with the fit, then I will go ahead and chop this in. Once I've marked out the angled mortises on the tenons to accept the key or tusk, I drill out the majority of the waste again from both sides with a Forstner bit and chop the rest by hand. The layout line we made with the tusk for the angled outer edge of the mortise acts as a fantastic visual guide for this part of the process. Also note that if you remember to assemble your carcass and mark the back of your angled mortise against the exterior of the bookshelf, you won't accidentally undercut your entire mortise the way I did, and you'll have significantly less chopping to do than I did, but no problem. My mistake doesn't show on the finished piece, so only you and I will ever know that it's even there. Alright, now we're finally ready for our dry fit. So if we've marked and measured and laid everything out carefully, then we probably won't need to make any further adjustments at this point. However, I have my chisels and my chopping block ready just in case there's anything that still needs to be done. So I'll grab each component and we'll see how this goes together. Finger pressure should help drive everything together at this point. That looks really good. So everything fits together really nicely here. I'm really pleased with the way that this fits. And so now it basically just needs its finishing touches. I'll take everything out. If there's any dents or anything in it, I can use a wet cloth and an iron to raise the grain to get those out. I'll do any finish planing that I want to do on any of the planks before I paint them. I'll chamfer any edges that I want to chamfer, and I'll basically just get this totally ready to finish. I'll finish the parts and then I'll put it together one last time and it'll be all done. So planing or sanding at this point is basically up to you and how you're going to end up finishing it. I'm going to leave some pieces as raw wood, and then I'm going to put milk paint on some of the other pieces. If you're going to stain it, or if you're going to paint the entire thing, then you'll definitely want to care for your wood differently that way. What I'm basically doing is planing away my pencil marks and the skip planing marks that were left over from when it was done before I purchased the wood. So as soon as the dirty spots and the marks are gone, then I'm going to call it good, and I'm going to slap a coat of paint on it and call it good. I'm finally ready to finish the bookshelves, and so I have all my parts laid out here. I'm not going to paint the middle parts, so I'm going to leave them as raw wood, but I have all of these laid out and I'm ready to paint them. I'm going to mix my milk paint, and milk paint is one of my favorite finishes because it's basically non-toxic. I'm still going to use gloves because it is an irritant for some people. But it's awesome because you can mix up exactly how much you need, and then you can, not ever have any waste. And it's just water and milk paint. It's equal parts. So I'm gonna make about a cup of paint by mixing equal parts paint and water. Now, hot water is, well, warm water is the best, so I'm gonna get some warm water in here from the faucet. After I started with the paintbrush, I remembered that it works way better to use a foam brush, so I switched to that. And it's working grand, so now it's just paint, paint, paint until all of the wooden parts that I want covered with paint are in fact covered. Okay, so I've got the panels painted, and now I'm just going to use a little scrubby to clean them up. Usually I use the 3M scrubby, but I can't find any at the moment, so I'm going to just use a brand new dish scrubby instead. And once I've got all of the little inconsistencies all cleaned up, then I'm going to use soft paste wax to bring out a little bit of sheen and luster, and then I'm going to put it all together and it's going to be done. So here it goes. And that's a wrap on the bookshelf build. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment if you have any projects you'd like some help tackling. Maybe I can make a video about that in the future. See you later.